In this video, I want to learn to pray like a hero. In Ephesians chapter 6, it talks about putting on the armour of God and how this is analogous with different parts of the Christian life and how we're supposed to do all of these things. And then it says in verse 18 to pray in the Spirit at all times, in every prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert and always persevere in supplication for all the saints. And that's what I'd like to look at in this video. Prayer. I really struggled not to do prayer as the very first video in this series, but hopefully it makes sense as we go through what I have to say here. Prayer is so important. As we work out what it is God is calling us to do, we need to pray about it. And not just praying prayers of, God, tell me what I need to do, or God, I want to be this, is this right? But all the other prayers in our prayer life need to be included and important. We need to pray for all the saints. We need to pray for all the things that God is putting on our heart to pray. And perhaps looking and realizing what we're praying about allows us to work out what we care about and perhaps work out what God is calling us to do. So we take a look back at our prayer life and see, where is God speaking to us? What's God convicting to us of? Who are we and who has God made us to be? Now, I also want to look at one of the heroes of the faith for me in this video, and that's Brother Andrew. Brother Andrew is famous for the book God's Smuggler, and it's a brilliant, brilliant book. And his call in that comes in a number of different ways and even changes throughout his life. Brother Andrew is from the Netherlands, and he's famous for smuggling Bibles behind the Iron Curtain into communist Russia. And then he continues to do that in the strong Islamic world in the Middle East after that as well. And he gets called in a number of ways, and I recommend reading that book because God speaks to him in a number of different ways and calls him in a number of different ways to different things. And so he feels this calling to be an evangelist quite early in his life, and that affects the decisions he's making, that affects where he takes a job, that affects where he's going to live. And so this call to be an evangelist is one of these primary callings. However, it later changes, and it's still a call to be an evangelist, but it's also a call to strengthen the church before it dies out, initially behind the Iron Curtain, and to go and care for and help struggling churches in countries where they cannot openly worship God, talk about Jesus, and talk about the Holy Spirit. And what Brother Andrew says about prayer is that it underpinned everything he did. It seems that there were a number of really miraculous things in his life and ministry. But he prayed and he prayed and he prayed. And he has this massive emphasis on prayer and has written other books on prayer aside from the biography. I do recommend both of them, and I love reading biographies because they're just really easy to read. Brother Andrew says that we need to first join in God's purposes through prayer. He talks about how Jesus teaches his disciples to pray. He doesn't teach them to preach. He doesn't teach them to be carpenters. He doesn't teach them to be better business leaders. He teaches them to pray, and the prayer affects everything else in their lives. Andrew Murray says that prayer is not a monologue but a dialogue. God's voice in response to mine is the most essential part. And I think this is why in Calling 2 I covered how God speaks to us today and why that came first. Because for all of our prayers, for all of our petitions, for all of our requests to God, there needs to be a vast amount of listening. I was privileged to be part of a team planting a church many years ago, and there was an older guy called Doug. And when things got heated and we had a little argument about what we should be doing or not, Doug would quite often say, I think we should pray the listening prayer. And we'd sit and quietly listen to God. And usually, God would speak to us at least to do with whatever it was we were disagreeing on and how to work better together, if not give us a complete answer at that moment and time for all the questions that we had needing to be answered. And so prayer is massively important. It's really important to talk to God. It's really important to be honest with God. Not just all of those lists of things that we want God to do, but also telling him who we are, how we are, what we are about. Also thanking him and being thankful for all the things that he has done for us and with us and through us. And out in the world, all that stuff that we may not be involved in. God is still at work out there. And so where is our calling this? Who are we to go and join in with? And so lastly, I'd like to finish by praying with you and for you. And this prayer I've stolen from Al Jensen, a friend of Brother Andrew's, as this has been a Brother Andrew centered prayer session. And it goes like this. And it's a very dangerous prayer. Lord, may I see what you see, hear what you hear, love what you love, hate what you hate, and feel what you feel.